This is The Calm Voice. It's a book about a serial killer, or probably more accurately, someone who goes on a mass killing spree. It involves firearms as well as other things. It's basically a slasher story whereby a 14-year-old girl is the person responsible. And the reason I wrote this is it's not really a reason, it's just a B-grade slasher film in book form is what I was going for. But I think the thing that inspired me to write it was, at the time, there was an incident that happened in America, and I thought, that's terrible. But it wasn't the first time that they had this kind of thing happen. And so it was on the news, and it was on the news quite frequently. And then after a couple of days, there was still talk about it on the news. What might happen in America? Will there be changes or not? And they were still showing things on the news. And then I sort of tuned in, because by that point it was like, I'm hearing this a lot. I tuned in and realised they were talking about another incident that happened like a day later. And then I thought, that's ridiculous. Surely someone's going to act upon this. And then about 2 or 3 days later after that, there was another incident. And then a day after that, another incident. It was just like these strings, the whole string of shooters going around having a bit of fun over the period of maybe 2 weeks. And I just thought, that's nuts. And so I just started to plan out this book by that stage, not to make a political statement at all, just to sort of say how easy it is for someone to do something like this, and how easy it is for someone who might have some mental issues to act upon impulse. That's what that story is. It's probably the first book, I think it's the only book I've actually used any quotes from other authors or other places as well. And all the quotes I used, and this is something for writers to take note of, all the authors I used were authors that surpassed what people believe to be copyright time frame. So someone writes something, and after a period of time the copyright is cut off, and so it's free to use. And it's not always the case. Most of the quotes I used are public domain, or very old quotes from people who lived in BC and early AD times, or CE times. But there was one that I used, was an author, and the quote was from one of his books. And I sought permission through a foundation that's named after that particular author. And I found that I had to actually seek permission, even though the author was long gone and the book had been out for 70 plus years. But the copyright had been transferred to this foundation, of which they are still the holders of the copyright of all of this author's books. And so, because they held his copyright, this foundation held his copyright, I needed to get their permission, which they granted. And I was kind of surprised, considering the author is known to be a rather ethical, moral, if not religious sort of writer, where this book is not really ethical, moral, or religious in any way. And so usually there's a bit of a financial exchange when you seek rights to use someone else's material. I was granted permission to use it without payment, but I received all the documentation to say, yep, you've got permission to use this. which was very nice of them to do so. But it made me realise that copyright in some countries where it's permissible to use other people's materials after a certain length of time does not apply in every country, and that each country has their own copyright law. And if you breach that law, even if you live in another country, they can, or they might pursue legal action. So my advice to all authors everywhere, regardless of where you live, seek permission, find out. You may be right to use it, but it doesn't hurt to check. The Calm Voice was originally called I Am Calm Voice, and I have noticed that there are some places online still selling it as that, or have got it listed as that. If you do see one that's called I Am Calm Voice, it's not up to date. I have changed things in this book, and so those particular stores that are still selling I Am Calm Voice, they're not legit copies. They're not ones that I endorse. They're not ones that that my distributors endorse either. This is the up-to-date one, the Calm Voice, and that's it. Check it out if you like B-grade slashers.